Right here on my workbench is a pile of recycled wood. That's so jerry-rig everything, isn't it? And for the last week, I've been chopping up these pieces of wood that I've collected throughout the neighborhood to make the battery mounts and frames for our EV setup. So if you want to go green, go ahead and take a walk in your neighborhood, see who's left some furniture or wood-related things out front, like this board here. Several of these are actually used to hold up my pegboard, and these were mattress extensions or mattress frames. You can see here where they would screw in with the legs, and those legs are the same ones holding up this end of this little table. Some of that wood is also here, used to cradle my extra engine. Wood slats from like upholstery damaged furniture or bed frames, etc. Very useful because you can put to a variety of uses around the garage. For example, there's a horizontal wood slat and a little leg used to hold up the bumper while the car is getting worked on. And its counterparts over on that side also holding the bumper. We're going green with this project. Wood is a renewable resource, but it's nice to save any number of trees from being cut down and the wood just being thrown away. Wasted wood is kind of a shame. So if you want to stay green, find ways to repurpose things. It's always fun and it's creative, so you can stretch this, keep your brain soft, malleable, keep that gray matter juice pumping. I'm a little lost in all these metaphors here, but recycled wood, electric car, yeah, it might run on coal, but at least we feel better about putting this to use. The bolts here for the motor mounts are 12 and 3/16 apart. They have a little bit of wiggle room, and then that wiggle room gives you a half-inch difference in terms of width on the mounts, and it gives you a little bit of adjustability if you need to go, one side higher or lower. The reason I'm putting them on the motor mounts is because I want the motor and the transmission, the electric motor, to be insulated from vibrations. So if I mount it to the frame of the car, it will be very rigid and we will feel those vibrations in the driveline more in the cabin. So this kind of helps to insulate a little bit of that. We're back to the cardboard aided design. So CAD will help us one more time because it's a lot easier to move this around than the big boy motor, which is 120 pounds of magnets and aluminum and copper windings. This curves a little bit as it squeezes the bottom and then it becomes completely flat. Approximately 66 millimeters. Double checked it, looking pretty good. The whole bore is about 31. Where our cradle needs to end up, from the center point to the outer point, the entire thing is 8 5/8 inches or 220 millimeters. Here we go, there's that right measurement. And then from there, we need to line that up with the transmission. And there's wiggle room for everything, which is nice. So knowing that our motor needs to be 66 millimeters above this plane, we're sitting at 122, so it needs to be exactly half as high, which means this center point of the motor is going to be down here. Really low center of gravity that gives us plenty of space above it for activities. The battery box, woo! Do I seem happy? You'd never guess I'm going through a breakup. Anyway, the work continues. Work kind of keeps your mind off things when you've got personal problems. Life goes on, the EV build continues. Oh, dry your tears, Dave. As I'm double checking this and I'm like, it still needs to go lower. I'm thinking this is like really low. Let's have a look here. Compare the HyPer9 cardboard aided design to the Volvo B30, and you'll see it is so small. If we line them up kind of end to end, it still has so much more to go. It sits aft of the motor mounts regardless. So those brackets need to move it up at least those 6 inches, and all of the rest is just done with the transmission supporting the back end. So this is, probably gonna bolt up right where this cross member is here. Whew. lot of measure once, twice, 3 times, cut, measure, cut. Thankfully, it's just wood. We know this adapter plate is 65 millimeters thick. That's from this flange to the end. So we're gonna add that to the HyPer9 measurement of 355 millimeters, and we'll know exactly how far from the transmission to the front of the motor we are. And since we have our motor here, we can also take the measurement from the motor mount to the back of the engine to know where the HyPer9 needs to finish, where it needs to start, and the gap to take up with this bracket. New numbers. We're gonna do everything in millimeters, but the inches step will come up later since our rulers are all in, our tape measures are in inches. So it's my 3rd day of working on this mount, and I'm thinking that I need to account for the thickness of these. Now that I got some fresh eyes, I have to account for the thickness of this because we're gonna be using steel. Yep, I was right. You see, when I make the top half of our brackets using this comparable size plastic to the metal we're gonna have, it's bumping up against everything because it's dropped it all lower. Otherwise, our previous wood was like up here and it cleared nicely. What if I just use the motor mount brackets? Kid Dave's getting a light bulb idea. If I use these motor mount brackets, is that gonna make my mount vertical? Because right now I'm kind of dealing with the crookedness of them. Sure enough, the Volvo mounts, and we can put them this way, or we reverse and rotate them, and that gives us a mounting surface here. Or we rotate them again, and it gives us this, a cradle, which goes vertical, and with a little massaging, we can get this to go flat. But we don't need that because this is actually too high. Our HyPer9 is going to be pretty low. But the important thing is that it takes this funky angle from the bracket and the mount, and it gives us a straight line from which we can mount something. Well, as I'm thinking about it, I think this is not an ideal situation because the weight of the engine was pushing down right here. But if we have these pushing like this, flex our mounts in a backward position, and I don't think that that's going to age them very well to have the rubber pressed like that. So it might be better to use the mounts in the original spots and then build up in the middle of them here, so that keeps the weight into the middle. But it's engineered to handle the weight this way rather than pushing them out to the limit that side. And I think this is going to give us a longer service life on these mounts. I'm noticing a little asymmetry here. The driver side and passenger side mounts are different. Yeah, it's a 1/2 inch difference. So it kind of puts everything over this way. What I think we're gonna do is just have Soren create a big plate that'll probably span from here all the way to here, and it'll go back to maybe about there. And then I can use that shape, whatever returns, I'll just cut it. That way I can figure out where to position the cradle. I'll have an entire platform for it. Okay, I got the solution to the mosquitoes, and that's old ways are the best ways, Bond. Just put a big mosquito net up on the garage door. It's starting to take shape. I'm getting tired of looking down into this engine bay too. Actually, I'm not, but I feel like I have to say that. Look, I'm taking pictures here, I'm making measurements. They're not to scale, but at least we have some idea of what we're working with. But I'll keep in mind what won't help handling quite a bit in the same way as having 150 pounds of batteries on top of the motor. From the motor mount center of that bolt hole to the end of the engine, that's a pretty static measurement, so we know where to put the end of our HyPer9, 17 3/8 inch. So our HyPer9 needs to finish there, and it's not just the HyPer9, it's the HyPer9 plus the bracket, the aluminum end adapter. So those will finish there, and that's where it's gonna bolt up to the transmission. So the transmission will start at the finish of this bar. Okay folks, we've got version 2 of our mount kind of finished, and a few problems I'm facing is that it's all sitting practically right between the motor mounts. Oh, it's getting tight. We're getting ever closer. It's like the end of the 3rd day on this, and you fabricators out there are getting so frustrated with how long and slow this has been for me, because for you this is probably very easy. You got the right tools, and I'm over here messing with plastic and wood. What's going on, Dave? Come on, get it together. Learn a new skill. All right, this is what we just made in the car, and now we're gonna shave it down and clear the cross member with it, make it look attractive and then brace it so that it can be protected during shipping, because I really want this not to fall apart in a box, you know, especially with the extra weight on these motor mount ends. All right, here we go. Ooh-wee, gentlemen and gentle ladies, it's looking good. It's like 1 a.m. I think this is my 4th day working on this. I had the weekend to sulk and decide what I'm gonna do with this thing, because it's a little too narrow and I just kept adding to the sides of it. And I was like, man, we're either stressing the mounts, the rubber mounts, or we're gonna be shaving aluminum from something, or it's gonna be a very tight interference fit. And I decided we're gonna do away with the aluminum arms, and we're gonna try to go back to what version 1 was doing, and that was to create the angle for this. The reason I didn't do this one long term, because we got the angles right, but the reason I didn't do that is because it's gonna be very thick to have plywood versus the actual gauge of the metal. So I'm just gonna build it out of foam. I'll put it in place, I'll glue it, it should be fine. Let's call it. The final location of the motor is in place. Its angles and things are held together from anything using bungee cords, clips, tape, and foam. So how accurate is it? We'll find out. We'll just add this piece and then attach the 2 of them with a couple layers of hot glue and foam. Day 6, version 5, and I think it's going to need to get a little cleaned up, because it's gonna drive my fabricator crazy if all of this stuff is in weird chunks like this. How do you know what to do with something like that? With our precise measurements now, everything is very carefully handled, because the foam, if it bends, it'll lose some of its measurements. We've got a few braces in between there. We're gonna add some gusseting to the front of this plate. It really could be shortened. It doesn't need to stick out this much. I think I'm going to probably reduce it just to here. I'm overthinking it, because I'm expecting, you know, if this is an off-road build, I want it to be very sturdy. You know, if it had to sit and deal with vibrations. I've driven through Boston. I know what it's gonna be like where this car lives. The potholes are 300 years old there. So one of our remaining issues is getting the level to be correct here. And you see, we've got this nice piece of broad wood here for clearances on the end to kind of give us a minimum as I was building the platform. But the cross member swoops down. It's got a nice little curve to it. So what that means for our bracket is that I'm gonna have to drop the center portion by about 9/16 of an inch. Let's give this a try. Okay, all of our lines are lined up. This is a final position for the motor inside of the cradle. It's gonna be pretty close to the bottom there. It's gonna be tight because the outside edge of it has a bigger measurement than the body of the motor. So that's why we had to do 6 attempts till I figured that part out. And then you see our center points lined up nicely. We've got our space on the side, representative of these guys here, a little bit of wiggle room on either end. If we need to do some left to right measurements, we have wallered out the holes here so that they match the slant on the bottom, so that the thing is pretty adjustable in the up and down position. And the bottom clearance needs to get finessed just a hair on these corners, because you can see it's tight clearance there. Dealing with that is risky long term because it could get clunky. 2-inch drop is in place. Let's see how the motor fits with that. Well, it looks like there's still a little bit of wiggle room there, so I put 2 pieces of the foam in to see how much. We're gonna raise that bottom flat piece. But like I said earlier, if this front comes up an inch or 2, I don't think it'll affect the transmission or the U-joints terribly, because it's several feet back. If this were a NASA space probe and we were flying to the sun, 1 or 2 degrees might send us into another galaxy. But I'm no rocket surgeon. I'm just trying to get this job done, because it's been like 6 days on this motor mount, which is crucially important to the entire project. I'm just tired, you know? Thankfully my back doesn't hurt yet. Okay folks, I am finally ready to show you. This is the finished thing, and I'm gonna be mailing it out as soon as I get a few more reinforcements on it. I've made another template here, and this is the battery box going in the front, so I can figure out the bracketry for it. With any luck, it's going to be plenty of clearance, but the thing that it's looking like it wants to do is go sideways, which would put this top portion where the lid goes on the side. May not be too unattractive, but it won't be symmetrical, so that kind of bugs me. Either way, we're not dealing with symmetry because of the way that these holes are for the BMS. Here we have box vertical. It gets tight, and it already puts it above the radiator support, so it's looking like you're gonna live this way. Good news about this is the kill switch is right here, front and center, for whoever opens the hood. Now we gotta find the extreme top limit. That's how high we can mount this. Looking pretty clear, huh? You're my eyes in there since I can't see anything. I believe this is going to be our box fitment in the end. This sits above the HyPer9. There will be a nice clear view to the HyPer9 once it's mounted. I'm just now realizing that people are gonna wanna see this thing, right? So you can peek through here. Quick side note, the folks at EV West said if you want more range, you're gonna overload this thing with batteries, and it really makes sense now as we're looking. The layout here gives us 4 in the trunk, which barely fit. We could throw another 300 pounds of batteries in the trunk to get another 4 batteries there. And then in the front here, it's like, you know, a custom battery enclosure. You're looking at stacking them this way. You could probably do like 6. But oh boy, it's you know, that's a lot of weight. And then you add in all the components for like the cooling, etc. And we're gonna use up this space here for stuff. So that really means this is the way it's supposed to be set up. Even if you wanted to do a dual HyPer9 kit, which would be kind of cool because it just adds the motor to the front. We still have the option there because they mate in the middle, and then the motor can just sit here in the front and clear. That's a separate dream for another phase of the build, but right now we're just doing the 7 batteries. I added 5 for safety, so the actual clearance is 20, but with the hood shut, it should be about 15, and that means that we have practically 2 inches of clearance at the rear, and I'll show you that right now. There's a cool little line that this car does from the top of this cowl to there, and the box could technically sit there, but it would have 0 clearance on our motor in the phase leads UVW, so we're actually gonna have to raise everything up about 1 inch. And it seems high, but it does clear because you can see along with the other fender there, it's about the height of these fenders here, but the hood does not stay flat. The whole thing is bowed up and around. So as we close it, we have ample clearance. The back of the hood really only goes to the line of this gasket, and that's actually this metal lip right here and here. These two are what tuck around this metal, tucks around the rubber. This is our point of interference. It's close, but it's still 20 millimeters. Let's have a look. That's 20 millimeters of clearance at the lowest point. And this is what it's gonna look like with the box in place. Our options are to clear coat it with a nice polish. We can have a mirror finish box, or we can powder coat it. My preference would be to color this the color of the engine bay, match it with the BP Auto Parts icy blue, which I've already done the engine bay with, as you saw in another video. I think this is a pretty good stopping point for tonight. It's been a very productive last 7 or 8 days. Okay, I should do a quick check-in here because I've been working pretty hard today on just getting the mounts ready to send the bracketry over, like a final template, to Soren and for making it out of metal. So here we have wood brackets. Got a couple of things in the front. I'm debating exactly how I want to work this out because it'll be pretty stiff chassis, I think is what I'm getting at, because we're just tightening it all up with these extra brackets. I confirmed that these holes with EV West, these holes here, are for the firewalls on the Volkswagen, and we're probably going to end up using none of them. So that's just how it is. I'll have to plug them up and make them look pretty. All right, here's the finished product for the battery box mounts. Hey, look at this. Our engine bracket has arrived, and it's really nicely painted. Soren went through and did a great job on the welds. It's really beefy steel. This steel is so thick. It's like, ooh, it's about 5 millimeters, that's some hefty steel. So this thing is really not going anywhere. We designed it really thick because we want to ensure that there's no flexing and cracking or breaking of the welds as the motor torques. It's going to be bolted down here, the motor, and then this goes into the motor mounts. And with any luck, it's going to sit over the cross member. There'll be a little bit of a gap underneath. So we'll do a test fit today. I got to get the motor onto the transmission, which means I got to get the clutch and bolt everything up and assemble today. It's not mating again. It's got a 1/4 inch gap. I'm gonna try a few things. I've pulled it out twice and what drama this is being. Come on now. All right, I just picked up the powder coated, sandblasted and powder coated battery box. It's like a Porsche Silver. It's the closest to a shiny aluminum and it looks really good. We're gonna send out the motor and the transmission to get the coupler redone. It down, would you? You're in the company of some legends here, huh? Look at you. All right, first possible solution. Step this up so that it's actually gonna sit on top of this rather than here, and that should get us that extra 10 millimeters that we need. Fingers crossing. Custom. Pulling this off, remove these, punch them through, and then do these guys last. And this is just a speed sensor, nothing.
That's the encoder.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
So if you actually go on our website, we literally just added this yesterday to our website.
It's 20 millimeters. So now it's gonna sit not there, but here on the edge. A little bit like that. Nice. Should be a little self-clearancing too, but it's gonna be nice and greased up when it's all said and done. I'm feeling pretty good about that.
Today, at least off, I'll try to pop that brass bushing out, make a new brass bushing in there, and just leave it undersized, and you can let me know. Actually, I'll bore it out to the 20 mil, basically put it back to how this one's.
High marks to the entire EBOS team, because every time I'm here for something, they've been very good to me. So thank you to Merritt and Michael for making sure that everything is set up right and correctly. I can't wait to get home and find 2 more of these boots so that I can complete Sauron's glove and have my cosplay all ready to go. So see you at home. I expected it to be a lot more time spent on this, but they took care of me right away, so that was awesome. Thanks, EV West. Let's see how it goes. New coupler is on, and it got stuck a few times because I didn't heat it enough. I only got it to like 250 to 300 degrees. I really want 350 to 400. The way you know is that the oil starts to brown right there on the shaft. And then I had a little oil drip going from my oiler, and that's how I knew once it started smoking, okay, it's go time. And like I said, so much faster with this than with this. I use this because I want it to be more consistent and around, and I felt like that was going to be too centralized, but honestly, I was just talking myself out of it, so let's do this. I also kept an eye on my brass bushing because I was a little concerned like maybe this would melt, but the temperature of this part never got above 300. So I think the brass is good there to like maybe 400 before it starts to distort a little bit. I think, maybe even more. What does the internet have to say? Able to spin it. We're in 4th gear, so it's 1-to-1 drive. As I spin this, it spins that. Looking pretty good. I think it's finally ready to get put into this car. All right. Phew. We are bolted up. Woo! Nice. Can't really tell, but it's clearing really good. Moving on. .2 transmission, clutch, motor, adapter, flywheel, Bello housing, all that. Minus the weight of the chain, which is probably another 3 pounds, so you could say like 275 or so. Not too bad considering the cast iron engine weighed this much. Older HyPer9s had a face that you could attach to right here, and some of those were also machined for the through shaft for the dual motor setup. And EV West has now made a custom rear face for these, which does have the bolt holes on it, and it extends a little bit. It's about $700. That's pretty close to what we paid for this guy. And because now that's available, I'll try that for car number 2, Ivy. But car number 1, we'll just try to make this work the way we designed it, because it's a lot, you know, having to make this thing step down and over. It'd be real convenient because the mounts are here and the face is there to just build a shorter bracket, and then I don't have to worry about all this stuff. But it also acts as a skid plate. I'm just a little concerned about how much, because we need to put this in the car first, figure out our spacing this way, and then we'll see how much the motor has. It might sit, the end of the motor might sit here, the end of the motor might sit here, somewhere between here and here, by my estimations. So we're keeping everything kind of loose, but snug enough that we can maneuver it in. So let's set up the camera, see what we can do. It's a big moment. I don't know if part number 1254484, this foam pad here, is advertised as being for the 164, but I bought it because it looked close to the right shape. Turns out it's perfect, and this is going to help insulate a lot of our noise from the shifter tunnel right into the cabin. the feelings that I had at the beginning of the project, I was just so overwhelmed with it because it was like, how do we mount these things? What are all these parts? My prescaler, my DC to DC converter, the controller, all of the like various things. There's still going to be a big learning curve ahead for getting the programming from the computer figured out once all of the EV components are together. But I'm happy that we're taking bites out of this elephant and we're working our way up that hill. And we're like, okay, one step at a time, figure this out. It's not, fully in place. It's just enough that we know where our firewall locations are, how far the hoses will run, where are we going to put a receiver dryer, where are we going to put our compressor, the evaporator, any other components, some sort of inline stuff. It's all, I'm gonna have to become like an air conditioning expert to build that system. I'm gonna have to become, of course, an engineer for this, and then an artist to make it look nice. So it's my kind of work. It's my line of work here. Everything's kind of interesting. You're becoming, I don't want to say jack of all trades, but the rest of that phrase is jack of all trades, master of none is oftentimes better than a master of one. So that means I'm having fun. That's all I'm trying to say here. Okay, right behind me there's a sparkly license plate frame. I want to use that on this car. It's ice blue. What do you want? Thanks for watching.
EV Conversion Diaries. It's time to connect the motor to the controller. The vector box is getting really tight, and I went through and redid a few of the prints because I didn't instructions to do your print.
That's quite a collection. Wow. So, business is going well?